take this in a lot of different directions. This past weekend, our wins against Nebraska or Iowa. We can talk about the draw. We're certainly excited about the draw and being able to host here opening weekend. Talk about Jackson State. We can go a lot of different directions. So just great time of year.
So what do you know now that you didn't know at 6 o'clock last night about Jackson State?
I think the story. I mean, I've been in a conference where it doesn't really matter what you do during the regular season. You've got to win a conference tournament, and you go back and you look to see how they got here, and their opening match of of their conference tournament, they're playing a team that they lost to twice, and they go and win that. And then the next match they play against a team that they lost the 2 times to them as well during that year, and they beat them. And then for the championship, they're playing somebody that they lost to both times earlier that year, and they go and they beat them. And so. It's a great story about about playing your best volleyball at the end of the year and believing and getting better and finding your way in the tournament. And certainly know that they run a 6-2, and got a couple right sides that are really good. So starting to dive into them a little bit.
Similar question, but I guess I'm curious of kind of, from the end of the show to now, like kind of what goes on, what are some of the things that for the tournament kind of, go on to kind of help you get ready? What's kind of the, if you could take us through the last, I don't know, what was it, 12 and a half hours or whatever, what was it like?
Tell you what it's not like is when I first got into this, you had to try to reach out to the other school, and you tell them what 2 matches that you wanted to see of them, and then they would FedEx you a VHS of the 2 matches that you wanted, and you had to wait until, and you're constantly just on edge, and for that FedEx driver to show up, and then you just start breaking down the VHS. Thank goodness we're not in that. You could immediately go up to our office and dig in on some film, and you have every single one of their matches. And so, this is the glory days as far as scouting goes. There's a bunch of media last night, and then you try to get a general overview picture of the 3 teams that are going to be coming here. Just looking at the stats, and then you start watching some video. Watch a little bit of video of Jackson State. And all the coaches are doing their things. We've got Jess Williams that is going and trying to take care of all the logistical stuff of the week, and Gary and Brittany and Jeff and Anne Marie doing their scouts and digging in on stats and things like that. But and then we chatted with the team. We had about a 5-minute talk with the team after selection show, and the general statement was, number one, of appreciation. Don't take this for granted. This is a selection show is a great time. A time that no matter how many times you've been through it is something that you always remember. And let's make sure that we're utilizing our time and enjoying the process.
Kelly, you have, I believe, 4 starters who came here as transfers. When you're evaluating players in the portal, what criteria do you use, and why do you think there's been such a seamless blend of new people coming in, and yet this team continues to win?
Yeah. I think when you're talking about portal, it's you're going to see a lot of different philosophies around the country. I think I try not to get into a bunch of judgment. It's whether you're recruiting and getting commitments from kids that are freshmen in high school. Certainly we've been in that place before, and everybody had a long runway before they got here, and to now where you have people that are committing their junior or senior in high school, or transfers after a semester or after 4 years, you have a wide range. The focus is us trying to find the right players, the right types of personalities, characters, people that we're not going to just go chasing talent. They've got to fit. They've got to know what our culture is. They've got to, we're not going to cater to people that that don't want to be a part of what this is. And you try to fill out the roster with as much talent and the right fit as possible. And so we've been really fortunate that the players that have come in here have added to the culture. They've been good kids, and whether they've been people that have started or people that have not seen the court very much. What is critical is they've been Badgers, and so we've been really fortunate with the evaluations and people coming in here and adding to the culture up to this point.
Kelly, kind of a two-part question. You talked last week about changing some things in the lineup to try to be at your best at the end of the year, and obviously that played out, and you beat Nebraska. What are some things that you maybe saw differently now that you've made a couple of those adjustments, and furthermore, now that you're at that point of the season where it all really matters, kind of how fired up are you guys for this time of year?
Yeah, I mean, so you have. You can either get locked in on a rotational lineup and stay with that throughout the course of the year, and hopefully you're fluid and you're not giving up points due to uncertainty or whatever. That's certainly a route, and we've certainly have gone that route many years. This year has not been that. You give up a little bit by going into a 6-2. We feel like the positives have outweighed the negatives with that. And we've done some changing with what right side goes with what setter, with what middle goes with one setter, 2 rotations versus the other setter for 1 rotation. We flip those. We've done quite a few different tinkering, I guess you will, and try to collect data on that. But one of the philosophies that we try to have is have players that do more than just one thing. We want players to be able to play the game of volleyball and be able to. Hopefully we have middles that can also serve and they can also set and, step in and take an out-of-system ball. They can hit a high ball as well as a quick. They can hit off 1 foot or 2 feet. Our right sides can do the same thing. And, being more general of a player rather than specialized has been something that we've gone with the past few years, and that's given us a little bit more flexibility. It comes at a cost, but we think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. So we can match up a little bit more with our opponents and get certain people in front of their blockers or their attackers that we want. It's been a real strength of the players we have here.
I don't know how much time you've spent looking at the bracket at large, and there's always kind of a tradition of picking holes at every committee that ever picks a bracket. But there was a change in the last year or two with how the seeding is done, or seeding it deeper. And just your thoughts on the bracket at large, if you've been able to study it and what sort of job they did, and maybe even just it feels like they've upgraded the selection show from a few years ago and the exposure of it, just that whole process.
I thought the show and the production itself was by far the best we've ever had. I mean, I've been critical of it at times in the past where I thought it fell short. I thought it did a great job. I thought they treated the sport with a lot of respect, and the 3 commentators they had, I thought were really knowledgeable and added a lot of value to the broadcast. I thought it was really well done. The bracket or the seeds, not much seemed to jump out at me. me. I mean, you can nitpick some different things. The committee has a tough time. You look at Florida that was seeded. Certainly, we saw them, and healthy with all their pieces. I mean, that's a team that you could have made an argument as 1 or 2 seed in the entire tournament. But they've had some injuries, and the losses have piled up a little bit more than before the injuries. And so, what do you do with a team like that? Those are tough decisions in that room that I'm sure they had a lot of discussion about it. A little surprised that Kansas State didn't make it. That seems to be, when you beat Texas and BYU a couple times, that seems to be a team that's capable of getting in the tournament and winning. But again, and I didn't sit there and study who the other teams are that made it and what theirs were. So what you want is people in there that know the sport and that they have real solid metrics and that they're passionate about it. They're trying to do the right thing and nobody's digging into the minutia of it more than the people that are in that room for 3 days. And so nothing really was glaring. Just really appreciative of the people that put their time and energy and effort into doing this. It's a heavy lift, and on the surface, the brackets seem to be pretty fair.
Specifically on Timmy and Carter, what did you see in those 2 players when you were evaluating them and seeing them being good fits, and what have they brought to the team this season for you?
Well, Timmy's playing her best ball right now. The last 4 matches, I think she's hitting almost 350, and so I mentioned that to her yesterday. Her response was, "It's about time that we got there," and then it was like, well, no time better than the present right now. She was so giddy to be able to make the tournament. It's so fun to, there's an energy about everybody when the selection show happens, but that was a dream of hers. She's never been in the tournament, and so to watch her excitement, she was just giddy yesterday after the show. That was really cool. She's come in here and she's bought in. She's wanted to experience the tournament, and she wants to learn. She wants to go and play it professionally. She wanted to challenge herself in a different way. She's all the way in. She knew what this was going to be about. We talked a lot before she ended up committing here of what the commitment was going to be, what the responsibility, what our team culture was. It was very, very, very clear in her mind of what she was walking into. And you see her talent, and our players wanted her to be a part of this. That was, they were around here. It was a little bit longer recruiting process with her, so they'd been on the other side of the net with her. Some of them had gotten to know her, so they were all the way in on her coming in. Carter was a little bit quicker, because the portal, when she got in was during Christmas break, and so it was a little bit faster. I remember getting a text or 2 that, when it finally made its way probably through our team, it was that she was out there. I got a couple of texts that, Carter's in the portal, you go get her. And, they didn't know we'd already had a conversation. She'd actually, before it went to social media, it had already been in, the NCAA portal information. We've already had those talks. And so, I think what she values and what she's trying to accomplish fit into what our values are. And when you're willing to work hard and sacrifice yourself for something bigger than yourself, you've got a chance of fitting in with our group.
Going back to Timmy, as far as her play of late, why? What are you seeing that's maybe gone into her, her percentage being what it is of late?
Like a lot of athletes, you stop thinking a little bit. You stop analyzing. You just let it rip. And she's playing with a little bit more freedom than probably what she was earlier. I would see that. It takes time sometimes to get into a new culture and a new team and 2 new setters and new tempo and And we've got some strong personalities on this team, and trying to find your fit. All those things, I think, kind of come into play. And you know what you hope is that they're able to find their groove before before it's all said and done. And I think she's finally given herself permission to just go, and that's certainly a fun place to be when you can get to that point as an athlete without overthinking and overanalyzing and worried about making mistakes and all those things. And her position has evolved a little bit, you know, 6 rotations and serving and playing on the right and playing on the left. I mean, we've moved her around quite a bit and trying to figure out the tempos of both setters, and it's a you know, but I think we're getting at a point, and she's getting at a point where she's feeling really good. And I know this, you know, when Timmy is feeling good, it takes her team to a totally different level.
With CC hitting the 500 career block mark, I mean, what can you say about how much of a difference maker she's been on this team, and maybe why she's been such a difference maker on this team this year?
Yeah, I mean, she's an assassin. There's a tenaciousness to Cece. You know, she is very competitive. She wants to be very good. She, you know, doesn't say a ton out on the court, but it matters a lot. She loves playing the game. She can be very tough on herself at times, and you know, and she's one of those players that's just lost in every moment. She's been a very important player for us. You know, I think she does her job, and she does a great job blocking. She does a great job of working hard at getting herself in positions to take swings, and she serves the ball, she digs the ball, she's, you know, left back, middle back. She steps in, takes a second ball out of system and puts up hittable balls. She's one of those middles that works on her craft and is a complete player.
Devin Robinson's on the brink of hitting 1,000 kills. Can you kind of talk about who she is as a player and just how dominant she's been during her time as a Badger?
I mean, she's had an unbelievable career that has bigger moments in front of her. Loves the spotlight. You know, I was in here yesterday doing some work and got out of my chair to see if where things stood in the field house to make sure that it was set up. And she's down there working on our block moves and has sweat coming off of her chin. She was in this morning watching film and working on her game, and you know, and she'll be back this afternoon with team practice. It's you know, this is her time of year. You know, she loves this time of year. It you know, you see a different glow and energy and the practices for her when you get into postseason. Some people tend to get a little bit, you know, they get quiet and they start worrying and things. You get your best Devin at this time of year. So, the fact that she's closing on 1,000 kills is awesome. I mean, that's I didn't know that. She's been a really important player for us, and I know she's got some big time matches here in front of her.
What makes Sarah Franklin such a special player? And if I could just follow up on the portal questions, it's obviously become a bigger deal in college sports.
Really digging in on this, aren't you? I love it. Yeah.
Do you like it as a coach? Because you have some players leave, but it seems like it's been tremendously beneficial for your program.
Well, it's a school that people, I think, want to go to, and who wouldn't want to play in front of this crowd? Look, I think the portal is great, not because I've gotten great players. I just didn't like the old system. I thought it was wrong that players were pretty much stuck with a program, and you're sitting there, and you know, if you left, you'd have to lose a year of eligibility, or you couldn't be on scholarship, or the coaches could they'd only release you to certain schools. I think that the fact that if a player wasn't happy and they go to the coach and they say, I want to leave, the coach dictates whether they can leave or not and which schools they would allow them to go to. I mean, and that was forever like that. I mean, how asinine is that? It's not what college should be about. It should not be how we should be going about things with that age. So is this perfect where we are? No, but it is way, way, way better. Do we benefit from that? We do. But I'd have the exact same feeling if I was at the other schools I've been at prior. I mean, I've been at different level of schools, and that mindset has never changed for me of just the ability of people, if they're not happy, go somewhere and be happy. You got a small window of opportunity to do this game that we all love, and if you're not happy with where you're at, then go somewhere else. It's also my responsibility as a coach to create an environment and communicate openly and honestly for people coming in. So what they thought it was going to be is actually what it is. And so if constantly people are unhappy or leaving, I'm not somebody that sits there and says those are players' problems. That's their problem with kids today is they don't stay with their commitment. I don't look at it that way. If everybody's leaving my program, then that's me. There's something going on with my communication, or whether before they get here, or what their role is, or how I'm treating them, that they should be able to leave. So I think the portal is great, and I'm sure we'll have some that will decide to go somewhere else, in the coming years, and that's fine. And I'm sure we'll continue to have people that will see the advantages of getting a degree from Wisconsin and being able to play in front of this crowd and fan base and conference that, and want to be a part of that. And I think our transfers that have come in have had great experiences, whether they played a lot or haven't. We've certainly benefited from that, and hopefully we continue to. If we decide to go that direction, we continue to benefit. I'm not interested in having an all. Our entire team necessarily just be people that we recruited as juniors in high schools, and I'm not interested in having a team that is just transfers. Just like I'm just not interested in having just an all Wisconsin team or an all foreign team or whatever. I think a hodgepodge of bringing people together is what college is all about. Oh, yeah, Sarah. Who's that? I mean, Sarah is. I got a message the other day from Dana Redke, who was watching us. She's over in Europe right now and watching, and sent a text and said, "Look, I'm playing against the best players in the world right now, and I see almost nobody at our level, very few people doing what Sarah's doing right now. I mean, the range that she's attacking, she's passing 6 rotations. For 3 of those rotations, she's passing half the court, and she's seeing a ton of serves coming at her. Her blocking is getting better every week. She hits everywhere on the court, to different depths, different, she's got great vision of seeing where the defense is and then putting balls where they're not. She is absolutely fearless. She can get on a ball with a full approach. She can do a step close and get on the ball with very little approach. Her serving has gotten really a lot better. By the end of last year, we had to sub her out. She had no confidence in her serve. She just wasn't very good at it. And right now, she's one of our better servers statistically. She has worked really hard on her game, and I don't know if there's just not too many people right now that are playing at the level with the confidence that she's playing in. It's but all of that has come with a lot of work behind it.
Kind of a two-parter here, but can you? Last week you talked about what the possibility of getting one of the top 4 seeds and being able to host a regional and how big that would be. Can you estimate what the value is of being able to host at the Fieldhouse? Just what the Fieldhouse brings, and just second part, obviously there's 4 teams on your side of the bracket that could come here and play that you've seen already this season. What does that do for you as a coach?
When you say value, do you mean just the economic value of being able to sell tickets and what that does for the area restaurants and bars? Is that what?
Not quite. I just meant
okay,
the
all right.
difference of the environment
All right,
itself.
all right. It's a, I mean, so the top 4 seeds. I mean, those are big deals. I mean, they reward a great season, and but we also understand that it just doesn't matter if you don't make it to that second weekend, and so. You know, certainly if you're playing for regionals and regional finals for the opportunities to go to Final Four, I think every team in the country would rather sleep in their own bed and play in front of their home crowds. And, you know, and I'm sure the fan bases would rather save a little bit of money. You know, we've got a fan base that will travel. I mean, they'll go wherever we go. And, you know, the opportunity of maybe saving them a few bucks, and hopefully we get them, reward them with a trip to Florida in a few weeks. You know, we've been fortunate where we've played a lot of regional matches in the field house, and we've won a lot of them. We've lost some of them, and but it is even the matches that we've lost. Man, I can't imagine the fans weren't entertained. It's you know, and we put it all on the line. It's just been electric, and we're hoping we have some more of those moments in the field house. I know. Tickets were gone in minutes today for the 2-session tickets, 2-day tickets. I know there'll be single session tickets sold here on game day, but they went so fast, which says, I mean, you know, the Badger fans, they're fired up. They are absolutely ready.